Caitlin is ready for a night of fun at a Halloween party, dressed as a ghost and eager to celebrate. But when she stumbles into a secluded bonfire in the woods, she realizes she's not among friends. She's surrounded by the sinister Ku Klux Klan. As the night unfolds, Caitlin must navigate a terrifying situation where the cost of being in the wrong place at the wrong time could be her life. Will she escape their grasp, or will the ghosts of hate consume her? Before we dive into this incredible story, comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy the story. Now let's get started. Caitlin had always relished Halloween. Each October, the streets of her neighborhood transformed into a vibrant tapestry of costumes and decorations, where children ran door to door, their laughter mixing with the crisp fall air. She was known among her friends for her creativity and enthusiasm for the holiday. This year was no different. She had spent days planning her costume, excitedly digging through her closet to find something that would stand out. After much deliberation, Caitlin settled on a ghost costume. It was classic and simple, but also allowed her to express her personality. She draped a flowing white sheet over her body, cutting out eye holes to give it an ethereal look. To add a touch of flair, she adorned her ghostly visage with silver jewelry, emphasizing her love for the whimsical. The final touch was a playful swirl of makeup that gave her cheeks a ghostly glow. Caitlin felt both spooky and stylish, ready to embrace the Halloween spirit. As she finished getting ready, her phone buzzed with a text. It was Maya, her best friend, sending a last-minute invitation to a Halloween party at a friend's house. Excitement bubbled up in Caitlin as she read the details. "Can't wait. I'll be there," she texted back before heading out the door. The streets were alive with energy as Caitlin drove toward the address. Jack-o'-lanterns flickered on porches, their carved faces illuminating the path, and festive decorations adorned houses, reflecting the joy of the season. As she parked her car in front of the house, she could hear the music and laughter spilling out onto the street, filling her with anticipation. Stepping into the party, Caitlin was immediately enveloped in a festive atmosphere. Guests in a plethora of costumes mingled, sharing compliments and laughter as they danced to the beat of the music. Caitlin grabbed a drink and joined a group of friends, their energy infectious as they admired each other's outfits and exchanged playful banter. She felt a thrill of excitement, enveloped in the spirit of the evening. After a while, Maya found Caitlin, her fairy costume shimmering in the low light. "Hey, let's go check out the bonfire. It's moved to a new location," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Caitlin felt a slight pang of hesitation but didn't want to miss out on any of the fun. She nodded, excitement bubbling in her chest again. "Sure, lead the way." Maya sent a quick text with the new address, and Caitlin followed her to the car, feeling the anticipation grow. But as they drove deeper into the outskirts of town, the streets grew darker and more secluded. Caitlin's excitement was tinged with unease as they followed winding roads lined with trees. When they finally arrived, Caitlin's heart sank as she stepped out of the car. The scene before her was surreal. The clearing was lit by a roaring bonfire that flickered against the backdrop of the dark forest. But the gathering wasn't what she had expected. Instead of the sea, when they finally arrived, Caitlin's heart sank as she stepped out of the car. The scene before her was surreal. The clearing was lit by a roaring bonfire that flickered against the backdrop of the dark forest. But the gathering wasn't what she had expected. Instead of the carefree atmosphere she anticipated, she felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the figures surrounding the fire were dressed in white hoods and robes. Fear washed over her, and she instinctively took a step back, feeling the weight of her ghost costume pressing down on her. What had she walked into? Desperately trying to catch her breath, Caitlin ducked behind a nearby tree, her heart racing as she struggled to comprehend what she had just witnessed. Caitlin's mind raced as she crouched behind the tree, desperately trying to remain unseen. The flames from the bonfire danced, casting eerie shadows that flickered across the clearing. She strained to hear the conversations of the gathering, but the atmosphere was thick with an oppressive energy, punctuated by laughter that sounded more menacing than joyful. The chants were filled with hatred, words of bigotry and intolerance that reverberated in her ears. She realized she had stumbled into a Ku Klux Klan gathering. The revelation sent shockwaves through her body, turning her blood cold. How had she ended up here? Panic surged within her as she felt trapped between her instinct to flee and her desire to understand what was happening. What kind of twisted Halloween party was this? Through the shifting shadows, Caitlin could make out several members of the Klan. Their voices mingled with the crackling of the fire, speaking about purity and taking back the country. Each word felt like a blade, slicing through the fabric of her safety. As she watched, she caught sight of a large cross, its wooden frame draped in cloth, standing ominously beside the fire. Caitlin's heart pounded louder as she began to formulate a plan. She couldn't stay here. She needed to escape. She glanced around for a way out, noting the trees that lined the clearing. There was a gap between the dense underbrush, and it could be her chance. As she considered her options, she felt a surge of anger at the thought that she had almost unknowingly aligned herself with such hate. Taking a deep breath, Caitlin edged away from the tree, peering around it to assess the situation. The crowd was distracted, their attention fixed on the flames and their shared vitriol. It was now or never. She darted toward the gap in the trees, praying she wouldn't be seen. But just as she was about to slip into the safety of the woods, a voice rang out, startling her. "Hey, who's that?" one of the Klan members shouted, their gaze fixing on her white sheet. Caitlin's heart dropped. She turned on her heel and ran, branches and underbrush tearing at her skin as she fled into the darkness. She could hear footsteps pounding behind her, fueled by the sudden excitement of the chase. The laughter she had heard moments ago morphed into shouts of anger and disbelief. "Get back here," a voice yelled, sending another wave of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The forest seemed to close in around her as she raced deeper into the trees, the moonlight filtering through the branches, creating an otherworldly glow. Caitlin pushed herself harder, adrenaline propelling her forward as her lungs burned. She dodged low branches, her mind focused on one goal: escape. She could feel the heat from the bonfire behind her, her reminder of the hatred she was running from. As she broke through the tree line, she found herself on a dirt road. She stumbled, nearly losing her balance, but managed to catch herself. The sound of the Klan members echoed behind her, growing fainter as she continued to run. Desperation fueled her steps as she spotted headlights in the distance, illuminating the road ahead. She waved her arms frantically as a car approached, praying for help. The vehicle slowed, and Caitlin rushed to the side of the road, her heart racing. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a concerned face. "What's wrong?" the driver asked, their expression shifting to alarm as they took in her disheveled appearance. "Please, help me. I need to get away from those people," Caitlin gasped, pointing back toward the darkness of the woods, her voice trembling. Without hesitation, the driver opened the door. "Get in." Caitlin jumped into the passenger seat, relief flooding over her as the driver hit the gas and sped away from the scene. She glanced back at the dark woods, still reeling from what she had just escaped. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a mix of fear and gratitude. As they drove, she tried to calm her racing heart, taking in the warmth of the car and the kindness of the stranger beside her. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice shaky. "I thought I was done for." Caitlin leaned back in the passenger seat, the warmth of the car enveloping her as she struggled to collect her thoughts. The driver, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, glanced over at her, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice filled with empathy. Caitlin took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "I don't know. I was at a Halloween party, and then I ended up at this bonfire. I didn't know what it was until I got there. They were part of the Klan. I couldn't believe it." The woman's eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God, you're safe now," she reassured Caitlin, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "We need to get you to the police." Caitlin nodded, grateful but still shaken. "I just can't believe I walked into that. I thought it was a normal Halloween party. They were so hostile. I didn't even know they were out there." As they drove toward the nearest police station, Caitlin recounted the events of the evening, detailing her fear and the sense of impending doom that had washed over her at the bonfire. Each word felt heavy as she shared her experience. the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "I can't believe you had the strength to run away," the woman said, her voice filled with admiration. "Most people wouldn't have been able to do that." Caitlin felt a rush of pride and vulnerability at the same time. "I just didn't want to be a part of that. I refused to let hatred win. I want to stand against it," but as they pulled into the parking lot of the police station, Caitlin felt a rush of mixed emotions: relief, anxiety, and a lingering fear of what had just happened. The woman parked the car and turned to Caitlin, her expression serious. "Stay close to me. I'll make sure you're okay." "Thank you," Caitlin replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe I almost walked into that." Together, they entered the station, and the bright fluorescent lights felt harsh against Caitlin's skin. A uniformed officer at the front desk looked up as they approached, his face shifting from neutrality to concern as he took in Caitlin's ghostly costume, now rumpled and stained from her escape. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, standing up from his desk. I need to report something," Caitlin stammered, her heart racing as she remembered the bonfire and the Klan members. The woman beside her stepped forward. "This young lady was at a Halloween party, but she stumbled into a Ku Klux Klan gathering. They were threatening and hateful. She escaped from them, but we need to make sure they're stopped." The officer's expression hardened as he listened, his eyes narrowing with concern. "You did the right thing coming here. Let's get you to a safe room, and I'll call for backup to investigate that gathering." Caitlin nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The officer gestured for her to follow him down a hallway, leading her to a small room with a single table and a couple of chairs. A poster on the wall read, "You are safe here," but Caitlin couldn't shake the fear that still gripped her. As she took a seat, the officer introduced himself. "I'm Officer Reynolds. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Caitlin recounted her experience, her voice steady but her heart racing as she shared the chilling details of the Klan gathering. She described the burning cross, the chants, and how she felt the weight of their hatred pressing down on her. Officer Reynolds listened intently, taking notes and occasionally glancing up at her with a look of sympathy. "I'm glad you got away," he said after she finished. "We're going to handle this, but I need you to stay here for a bit while we gather more information and send officers to that location." Caitlin nodded, grateful to be safe, but still shaken by the horror of the night. "What will happen to them?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It depends on what we find when we get there. We'll do everything we can to hold them accountable," Officer Reynolds reassured her. "But your safety is our priority right now." As he left the room, Caitlin took a moment to gather her thoughts. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on her. She had unwittingly walked into a nightmare, a world filled with hatred that she had only heard about in the news. It felt surreal, and she had to remind herself to breathe. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Caitlin sat alone, her mind racing with thoughts of what could have happened if she hadn't escaped. The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped her back to reality. Officer Reynolds returned with a coffee cup in hand. "I thought you might need this," he said, setting it down on the table in front of her. "Just take a sip if you feel up to it. I'll check in with you shortly." "Thank you," Caitlin replied, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. She took a small sip, the bitter taste grounding her in the present moment. As she sat in the quiet room, she thought of the woman who had helped her escape. "Where is the lady who brought me here?" she asked, glancing toward the door. "She's filling out a report." "She was very concerned for your safety," Officer Reynolds explained. "You're not alone in this." Caitlin felt a flicker of gratitude at the thought. It reminded her that even in the darkest of moments, there were people willing to stand up against hatred. Caitlin waited anxiously, her thoughts swirling in a tumult of fear and uncertainty. The atmosphere in the police station was starkly different from the lively party she had anticipated. The laughter and music she had been so excited about felt like a distant memory now, overshadowed by the grim reality of what she had faced. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened, and the woman who had rescued her walked in. A determined look on her face. "Caitlin," she said, her voice firm yet kind, "I'm glad you're safe." "Thank you for helping me," Caitlin replied, relief flooding her senses. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up. You would have found a way to escape, the woman insisted, her eyes shining with confidence. But I'm really glad you're okay. I'm Rebecca, by the way. Caitlin, she introduced herself, feeling a connection with this stranger who had shown her kindness. What's going to happen now? Rebecca's expression turned serious. The police are investigating the bonfire. They're sending units to that location to make sure everyone is accounted for. I think it's important that you stay safe and provide them with as much detail as you can. Officer Reynolds returned just as Rebecca finished speaking. We've dispatched officers to the location you described. They're going to gather evidence and make sure that everyone involved is apprehended, he said, glancing between the two women. Caitlin, we need you to come to the station later to identify anyone you might have seen. Okay, Caitlin replied, her stomach tightening at the thought of confronting those individuals. Will I be safe? We'll ensure your safety, Officer Reynolds assured her. We have a protocol in place for situations like this. You're doing the right thing by speaking up. Rebecca reached out and squeezed Caitlin's hand, a gesture of support that filled Caitlin with warmth. You're strong for standing up to this. I know it's terrifying, but you're not alone. Caitlin nodded, feeling gratitude swell within her. The kindness of these strangers was a lifeline in a world that had felt dark and hostile just hours before. She was reminded that amidst the shadows of hatred, there were still people willing to fight for what was right. As the minutes ticked by, Caitlin couldn't shake the images of the bonfire from her mind. The figures dressed in white robes haunted her thoughts, their hatred palpable. She thought of the young children who might be exposed to such ignorance and bigotry. Anger began to bubble inside her, a fire ignited by the injustice she had witnessed. I want to help, Caitlin said suddenly, her voice resolute. If there's anything I can do to stop them, I want to do it. Rebecca looked at her, a mixture of pride and concern on her face. You're incredibly brave, Caitlin. Just by speaking out, you're making a difference. But remember to take care of yourself, too. This is a heavy burden to carry. Caitlin nodded, understanding the weight of her decision. She was determined to be a voice against hatred, even if it scared her. The conversation was interrupted by Officer Reynolds, who re-entered the room. We're ready to take your statement, Caitlin, he said. We need to document everything you experienced so we can take appropriate action against those involved. Are you ready? Taking a deep breath, Caitlin stood and squared her shoulders. Yes, I'm ready. As she followed Officer Reynolds down the hallway, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. But with every step, she reminded herself that she was not alone. She had allies in Rebecca and the officers, and together, they would shine a light on the darkness she had encountered. She was ready to face the truth. Caitlin walked into the small interrogation room, her heart pounding in her chest. The walls felt like they were closing in, reminding her of the oppressive atmosphere at the bonfire. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that she was in a place of safety now. Officer Reynolds gestured for her to take a seat at the table, and she complied, trying to steady her nerves. Caitlin, this is just a formality, Officer Reynolds said, taking a seat across from her. We want to document everything that happened so we can take appropriate action against those responsible. I'll ask you some questions, and you can tell me everything you remember. Don't worry, we're here to support you. Caitlin nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over her. She could do this. She was going to share her experience and ensure that the hate she encountered wouldn't go unpunished. Let's start from the beginning, he prompted. Can you tell me what you remember about the party you were supposed to attend? With a steady voice, Caitlin recounted her excitement about the Halloween party, the vibrant costumes, and the lively atmosphere she had expected. But her smile faded as she described how she had gotten lost and wandered into the woods. She could still feel the chill of fear creeping up her spine as she recalled the moment she stumbled into the clearing filled with robed figures and the fiery glow of the bonfire. As she spoke, Officer Reynolds took detailed notes, nodding along to show he was listening. Caitlin didn't shy away from any detail, describing the hatred she felt emanating from the crowd and the chilling chants that filled the air. She talked about the burning cross and the weight of fear pressing down on her when she realized where she was. "Thank you for sharing that, Caitlin," Officer Reynolds said when she finished. "You've shown incredible bravery. Now we need to discuss what happened when you were able to escape." Her voice shook as she recalled her frantic dash through the trees, the feeling of the rough bark against her fingertips as she pushed through the underbrush. "I didn't look back, I just ran. I thought they were going to catch me," she admitted. "You did the right thing by getting to safety," he reassured her. "It's crucial that we understand exactly who was there. Do you remember any specific faces or voices?" Caitlin took a moment to focus, conjuring the images in her mind. "I remember a man with a deep voice. He was standing near the fire, leading the chants. There was also a woman who seemed to be encouraging the others. I didn't get a good look at her face, but she had long hair and a bright red dress." Officer Reynolds scribbled down the descriptions, his expression serious. "This is valuable information, Caitlin. It could help us identify them when we investigate further. We'll also need to check for any known members of hate groups in the area." As she looked around the room, Caitlin felt a warmth envelop her. She was surrounded by people who valued love and unity over hate. In that moment, she understood that even in the face of darkness, there was always a chance to shine brighter. When the clock struck midnight, Caitlin raised her glass. "To love, acceptance, and the courage to stand against hate. Together, we can create a world where everyone belongs." Cheers erupted around her, and Caitlin felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. She knew the journey wasn't over, but with every voice that joined the chorus against hate, she felt hope for a brighter future. Blurb. Caitlin is ready for a night of fun at a Halloween party, dressed as a ghost and eager to celebrate. But when she stumbles into a secluded bonfire in the woods, she realizes she's not among friends. She's surrounded by the sinister Ku Klux Klan. As the night unfolds, Caitlin must navigate a terrifying situation where the cost of being in the wrong place at the wrong time could be her life. Will she escape their grasp, or will the ghosts of hate consume her? With each detail she provided, Caitlin felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. She was reclaiming her voice, fighting back against the fear that had threatened to engulf her. The thought of bringing justice to those who perpetrated hate filled her with purpose. After a thorough discussion, Officer Reynolds looked her in the eye. "You've done something incredibly important today. Standing up against hate takes immense courage, and you should be proud of yourself." Caitlin felt tears welling up in her eyes, a mix of relief and empowerment. "Thank you. I couldn't stand by and let them continue." As they wrapped up, Officer Reynolds assured her that the investigation would continue and that they would keep her updated on any developments. Caitlin left the interrogation room feeling lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Rebecca was waiting for her in the lobby, a reassuring smile on her face. "How did it go?" she asked, concern etched across her features. Caitlin nodded, a genuine smile breaking through her earlier anxiety. "It went well. I told them everything. I feel like I'm finally doing something to stop this." Rebecca's eyes sparkled with pride. "You're incredible, Caitlin. I knew you had it in you. Together, we'll make sure they can't hurt anyone else." In the following days, news of the Klan bonfire made headlines, igniting outrage in the community. With Caitlin's testimony and the evidence gathered by the police, the authorities were able to apprehend several members of the group. Caitlin found herself in the middle of a community movement, speaking out against hate and injustice. During a rally organized to promote unity and support for marginalized communities, Caitlin stood on stage, her heart racing as she looked out at the crowd. "We cannot let hate divide us. We must stand together, support one another, and fight against intolerance. Every voice matters, and together we can create a better future." The crowd erupted in applause, and Caitlin felt a surge of hope. She was no longer just a victim. She had become a beacon of strength, inspiring others to join the fight against hatred. As the weeks passed, Caitlin continued to engage in community activism, sharing her story and encouraging others to speak out. She formed new friendships and bonds with people who shared her vision of a more inclusive world. Each day felt like a step toward healing, and she realized that the trauma she experienced at the bonfire didn't define her. Instead, it became a catalyst for change. On Halloween the following year, Caitlin decided to throw her own party, a celebration of diversity and acceptance. She invited friends, family, and even new acquaintances from the rallies she had attended. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, music, and costumes that celebrated various cultures. As she looked around the room, Caitlin felt a warmth envelop her. She was surrounded by people who valued love and unity over hate. In that moment, she understood that even in the face of darkness, there was always a chance to shine brighter. When the clock struck midnight, Caitlin raised her glass. To love, acceptance, and the courage to stand against hate. Together, we can create a world where everyone belongs. Cheers erupted around her. And Caitlin felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. She knew the journey wasn't over, but with every voice that joined the chorus against hate, she felt hope for a brighter future. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of love and care into telling these important stories, and your support means the world to me. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Have a blessed day.